TikTok, capitalist pig dog, immigration flip-flop lobbied via rim job, Met Gala airstrike, A-lister scrimshaw, paparazzi lip-sip the scandal as it drips off. You know I'd love to meet our leaders that were tipped off. Back when COVID was a few of us with wicked coughs, and be like, sorry, Mr. Senator, that you don't speak in terms of human worth, just in kickbacks and dipped stocks. Then punch that motherfucker like a shift clock. Hurry back home to my stack of straw dolls with their limbs off, where Biden's on the screen and he's confusing Xi and Kim Jong. Talking out his SIM card like someone plugged him in wrong, but then we hit the gist and suddenly his pitch drops. He whispers right at camera one with his fist balled. His words hang with the subtlety of a lynch mob as he says, rat your neighbor out and get a $5 voucher for the CIA gift shop. Hell, you'll even get a free stick of boot-flavored lip balm. 'Cause every day we make enough consent to fill a strip mall. So when I say eat the rich, I'm talking still raw, bone in, limb by greedy limb with a skill saw. Picture, if you will, a modern take on Naked Prey starring Bill Maher. Picture misery deeper than a reach in Biden's pill jar. You pull a fistful out and down it, honey, here we are. The future's full of shit and clear enough to know we're better veering off and fleeing far, somewhere Jeff will never think to look beyond the fading stars. Beyond the homeless camps they came and swept for the parade of stars, who showed their faces proudly while we covered ours. Met Gala butcher block, we feed the hungry and we tax the filthy rich until they fucking starve. Poke the hornet's nest enough, eventually it comes apart. Eventually I'll run my course and numb my art. I'll snuff the little embers out and clean my car. Wait it out enough and then my sample bank will seem bizarre. Just foreign clips of fuzzy inspirations that I've washed away or smoked beneath a half a dozen years of char. Till I've long forgotten the familiar buzz of pressure in my ears when it's just me alone with thoughts of drones, Boston dogs, BlackRock homes, and women wearing maiden's garb. The times when privately I wondered if we'd ever shake these chains of ours. When every vote for lesser evil yields another toxic barb, a pox on your democracy, a swelling in your child's heart. Before the time to educate ourselves is gone and suddenly our trial starts. Those among you capable of standing, please rise. Wipe the crocodile tears from your landlord's eyes before the trial starts. All rise and the trial starts.
You know, sir, I like you much better with my glasses off.
I guess I was born with the curse of foresight. 'Cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the ore flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself, hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you sub to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send 1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the Capitol wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. Note of the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak. Too hungry to speak. too hungry to stay and they just lie at his feet. Joe is fresh out of empathy, fresh out of policy, but he'd love to know, what was your favorite ice cream flavor to eat? Back when you used to eat. I guess the road isn't rocky for people who thought we were free. They'll believe what they read, and Joe's here to lull them to sleep. Counting us down by the dozens, the culling of gullible sheep, led to the slaughter by media tyrants and government thieves. These are the leeches that stubbornly suck where there's nothing to bleed. These are the tumors that force us to crawl on our knees. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free.
SWAT team took your neighbor today. Watch them as they walked him away. You told yourself extremists come in all different shapes. Met his eyes and lowered your gaze. Is it too late for us to ever change? When we are collecting the dust of better days, they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to be safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Sheriff stopped your daughter today. Pepper sprayed her twice in the face. He must have had good reason if he'd treat her that way. At least that's what they've taught you to say. But is it too late for us to ever change? Once we're collecting the dust of better days, and they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to feel safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Feds arrived and had you detained. Said you'd made some unchanged. Tased you till you felt like you'd forgotten your name, or life before they had you contained. Oh, life before they had you contained. SWAT team took your neighbor today.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Whoa, what's going on? Hey, the things around my head's not working. Okay, I don't know what's up with that. Let's fix it. Hi, everybody. This is Indy. I don't know what's happening there with my thingy there, but okay. This is IndieNewsNow Live. I have no idea why that's happening the way it is, but we'll have to fix that later on. Okay. It's weird. All right. At least the arms are moving. That's good. It's weird without the thing around the head, though. I have to say, it kind of throws me off. If you give me a minute, let me see if I can't fix that. Go into this and go into this. Yeah, we got to do some tech stuff for a second. No big deal. Sorry, everybody. Where is it? There. That's the scene I'm looking for. And is that it? No. Okay, I think we're just gonna. How about this one? Hey, we're back. Okay, I don't know how that turned off. That's the weirdest thing ever. Okay. Hi, everyone. Now we're back. Now this is really me for sure. Okay. We got Substack going. We got, yes, it's the thing around the head. That's what she said. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. We're live everywhere. We're on Rumble and YouTube and Substack and Odyssey, Kick, Twitch, Twitter, and we're self-hosted at, of course, IndieNewsNow.com. It's not just the name of the show, but it's also a website that we built to aggregate independent news so you know where to go and where to find stuff that's been vetted and that you can trust. Tonight, we're going to continue to talk about fuck Israel because we do that every night or every week. And the other thing we're going to do is I spent quite a bit of time going through all this Richard Medhurst material where he's been laying out the case for what's happening across the world and that it is all orchestrated and coordinated. If you watched Angel in the Afternoon, there's Angel, the handsome cynic. Good to see you, bro. If you watch Angel in the Afternoon a couple weeks ago on INN, he read some of Richard's article talking about this global war and how the United States is pulling off a coup to capture the world's energy supply and hold it pirate hostage to make sure that we have a seat at the table going forward. It's a fascinating, and then what's happened since he published this article. First, he put out a video in the middle of April. Then he published an article basically with the text of his video and supporting evidence on May 1st. And that's what Angel went through. And since then, it's pretty much played out according to the way that he had predicted. And I think that there are some questions to be asked also. I don't think that it was absolutely right. It was really long. Couldn't finish it exactly. You know, I like to do long reads here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to break down Richard's video. I don't do that very often, but he made a 33-minute documentary about this. And I'm going to pause it in a couple places. And we're going to get through the whole thing, and I'm going to watch the full half hour. All right. And that's going to be the majority of the show. I also have a ton of tweets supporting this that he's made since that further back what he's saying has played out that way. All right. And then I've got a lightning round. Sadly, we do have a new GoFundMe to add this week. Another member of our extended internet family that, you know, we've been tight with for 6 years reached out. So we'll talk about him and his story later. We don't know much yet, but we're going to find out. Before we get started, of course, let's go back to this. Here we go. What's going on? Did my stream deck just freeze? What the? Dude, something's going on here. Okay. So let's do this. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I manually did that. The ways to do that are up on that on that board that you see right there. I love everyone on there. Really appreciate everyone who supports us. Cash App, $ Indie News Network at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. And you can scroll up. Oh, God, Greg, 33 minutes, dude. Yeah, Illuminati confirmed. It's 33 minutes and 33 seconds. Yes, Greg Walker's on there for sure and highlighted because he's one of the more ardent supporters of the channel, even though he does have to take a lap sometimes. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Patreon.com/Indie News Network. Again, the website, IndieNewsNow.com. There's a way to keep the media free and support tip via Stripe there. And then we've got Substack. We're live over on Substack right now at IndieMediaToday.com. I also publish over to INNNewsletter.com. That's part of the network that I co-founded. So we do that. Subscribe there, too. There's a bunch of podcasts, including American Tradition with Jesse Jett. And Greg is now demanding Jesse Live or I Riot. Well, you're going to have to wait till the end of June because we only do that show the last Thursday now of every month. But that's cool. Yes, Fredward, thank you. IndieNewsNow.com is the website where you can bookmark it, get unfiltered news 24/7, linking right to the site. We're not trying to gatekeep any of that stuff. And you can also watch INN live whenever we're live. And there's a way, again, to support the network. You can also get to our merch store. So you can pick up some merch as well that's another way to support us. All right, a lot to get to tonight, so we're going to get started. And let's do this. Let's turn off Fred's IndieNewsNow.com, even though I really appreciate him doing that. Love you, Fred. Happy birthday, by the way. Fred Edward had a birthday yesterday, so everybody wish Fred a happy birthday. Okay, let's do this. Here, okay, blow this up. Nobody gets to see my DMs. Sana Saeed, I am a big fan. I became a paid subscriber of hers on Substack recently. Just saw footage of a Palestinian father carrying the shredded body of his daughter, killed in one of several Israeli airstrikes on Gaza today. Just today. Israel declared South Lebanon a combat zone and is demanding people leave while it continues to bomb and kill entire families. All of this is supported and funded by this country, by both parties, even if some within them offer shades of dissent. Remember, none of the above. That's the theme here. Palestinians don't have time. The Lebanese don't have time. They're being slaughtered. They're being eradicated, family by family, child by child. And she's profound, and this is very personal for her, I mean, as it should be for all of us. First of all, this is just the beginning. They're going to come for all of us in the end. I think that's what the Dust of Better Days and all the songs that I put up tonight talked about. But man, I was actually going to show the video of the father, that footage, but it's just, hey, I don't want to do it so early because YouTube doesn't like that. I don't necessarily care about YouTube, but you guys can find all that stuff. It's so horrible. And I don't, it's like, I think at this point, it's almost what Israel wants is for you to show that stuff repeatedly and traumatize yourself over and over again by seeing it. So if you want to go see it, go see it. It's absolutely awful. And I've seen a lot of horrible videos. I saw a headless kid this week. Again, sadly, it's not even the first one. Fuck Israel, because this is what happens every goddamn week. And then our media denies it, whitewashes it, acts as if that's not what's happening. Yeah, that's right, Nay. Oh God, when will it end? Is the right question. I don't know. When will it end? Because they're not stopping and nobody's stopping them. So Blade of the Sun, which is apparently a pretty big account, that's an author that's got 250,000 followers. Israel bombed a Roman fort in Lebanon over 2,000 years old, one of the finest examples of Roman architecture left on the planet, stood isolated on a hill. Israel bombed it anyway. They're terrorists, and they destroy everything. And you can see from all the pictures online that they're showing now. Here's Gaza 2023, 2026. Here's this Lebanon neighborhood prior to Israel bombing and now. And this is what they're doing everywhere. Yeah, but I don't think, honestly, a tax strike would help at all. They don't care. They're manufacturing the money without our taxes. They don't care. What they want is our compliance. What we need to do is stop buying shit. Like, complete hiatus. I think that's really the only answer. Yeah, fuck Israel is right. Okay, I don't know what else the answer is at this point, short of not just BDS, but shut the whole thing down. Stop commerce. Because until that happens, everybody's making money and everyone's got their heads down and nobody wants to know from it. So, in that vein, we've got Jason Ditz over at Anti-War. Netanyahu announces dramatic shift in Lebanon invasion as Israel conquers medieval castle. So, it hasn't been enough yet. All right? Ground troops have advanced to the deepest parts of Lebanon in more than 2 decades, 26 years. Benjamin fuck off Netanyahu, the war criminal who should be hanged at The Hague right now, has announced a dramatic shift in policy in the ongoing invasion of Lebanon, with troops advancing ever deeper into the country and reaching points that are as foreign to Lebanon as they've gone in the past 26 years with the capture of Beaufort Castle, which is what I just showed you. Now, this is all, again, part of Greater Israel Project, North America, the 10 Global Technates, Club of Rome stuff. This is trying to orchestrate all of this so that they can then, and this is also part of what we're going to talk about next with Richard, the global shipping trade and the global piracy of the oil and gas trade and how we are hijacking it, and we are going to end up becoming the gatekeepers of the seas, charging tolls and fees to be able to pass through without being bombed. We're literally turning into mafia dons. Crusader forces built Beaufort Castle, again, 2,000 years old, right? Which overlooks the Litani River in the mid-12th century. No, so it's 800 years old. Though the castle traded hands between Crusaders and local forces several times in the ensuing decades. Again, you're talking about 800 years ago. It's described as being notable for its good condition of a castle of this type, though its use as a military fortress for occupying 21st century forces, probably not great for it. Netanyahu said the conquest of the castle proved Israel was more united and stronger than ever. What a fucking piece of shit. France called for an emergency UN Security Council meeting over the matter after shitting their pants, which was similarly condemned by Israeli officials, who said the meeting should focus on Hezbollah's violation of the ceasefire. What ceasefire? You never cease fire for a fucking day. It's a joke. It's absolutely disgraceful. The gaslighting that happens on a daily basis. Israeli troops are now well north of the Litani River, which during the invasion of March was presented as the whole region they intended to occupy. Sure. Israeli troops now occupy roughly 20% of the entire country, and they continue to go deeper because nobody's stopping them. Defense Minister, that's a joke, Israel Katz, even though, how is it defense to attack civilians in a sovereign country that is not attacking you? That's not defense, that's offense, that's war. They might as well call it the Department of War. All right, Israel Katz, another war criminal piece of shit, cited Israel's conquest of the castle in the 1980s, in which the same IDF brigade captured the castle from the PLO during an invasion of Lebanon. They remained there until 2000, when Israel ended that particular occupation of southern Lebanon. How and why did that happen again? Lebanese Premier Nawaf Salam, because they didn't just decide that they wanted to leave. They were forced to leave. You can look that up yourself. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam called for an immediate ceasefire, okay, and Israeli withdrawal from Lebanese territory. There is notionally a ceasefire already in place that's been there for over a month, but Israel continues to carry out attacks and expand their offensive, killing hundreds of additional people and conquering ever more territory. He's so, like, clinical and disconnected in his speech about this, and in a way I commend him, and in a way I curse this. Like, they're murdering people while claiming a ceasefire and then running to the UN saying they're violating the ceasefire. And Jason, come on, man, you got to do a little better than that. I love you. You know, man, it's so frustrating to see all of this happen unchecked. Now, I want for everyone on Telegram, I'm going to teach you a little trick. And I learned that this week, and I'm excited to teach all of you that apparently you can share a native Instagram video onto Telegram and to Discord. What you do is you copy the URL, and before the word Instagram, you put the letters vxinstagram.com/whatever the URL is. All right. And now you are able to watch the video natively without having to click to watch it over on Instagram. You're able to preview it and see what it is, because before it was just a link, but also you can play it like I'm about to without ever having to be on Instagram, which is freaking great. Oh, that's not, I can't blow. And you can go full screen if it's widescreen, but this is vertical. So let's watch this awful video that I was debating whether I was even going to bring, but it's Doctors Without Borders. And I've had my issues with them too, but this one is important.
Doctors and nurses at Al Shifa's hospital were executed by the IDF. I'm Mark Bronner, ER Dr. Gaza Witness. Follow me for more sad shit. Al Shifa's doctors understood something that much of the world seems to have forgotten: medical neutrality. The idea is...
Hold on a second. There's more to the video. Let me just take off the VX, because there actually is more to the vertical here, I believe. Let's see. Yep.
Nurses at Al Shifa's hospital were executed. Doctors and nurses at Al Shifa's hospital were executed by the IDF. I'm Mark Bronner, ER Dr. Gaza Witness. Follow me for more sad shit. Al Shifa's doctors understood something that much of the world seems to have forgotten: medical neutrality. The idea is simple. If a wounded person comes through the door, you treat them. You don't ask who they voted for. You don't ask what flag they carry. You don't ask whether they are your friend or your enemy. You just take care of them. The staff at Al Shifa lived that principle. Hostages were brought into the hospital on October 7th. They received good medical care. Had wounded Israeli soldiers come through those doors, they would also have been treated. That's what doctors and nurses do. Then many of those same healthcare workers watched their hospital become a target. Colleagues were detained. Doctors, nurses were executed. Patients were displaced. The hospital itself was just devastated. As an emergency physician, I find that profoundly disturbing. A hospital is one of humanity's last sacred spaces. It's where we agree, at least for a moment, to set aside politics, religion, nationality, and war in the service of a suffering human being. The people of Al Shifa honored that obligation. The world should have honored it too. Doctors and nurses.
Very simple, you know, but it's a testimony from somebody who was actually there. Again, follow him for more horrifying shit. And I love that he says that. These doctors that go over there, from Perlmutter to Feroz Sidwa to Mark Bronner, these are fucking heroes. These are the real heroes that are patching people up in war zones. It's like, you remember the show, for those that are old enough, you remember the TV show Math? All right, MASH. All right, these are the guys that were in the MASH units, being dropped, having bombs dropped on them. But now you've got your allies, allegedly, quote unquote, that are dropping the fucking bombs on you on top of it. They know better than anyone how horrifying Israel can be. So the other thing that I wanted to, this is a little bit of a joke, but this also dovetails in a lot with what we've been talking about. And this is in the Israeli paper Ynet. All right. Did Netanyahu buy bot followers? Instagram gains tens of thousands overnight. Bibi buying bots? No. Bibi's boosting buys with bots. You bet. Researcher Gil Feldman, this is amazing how he breaks this down. I mean, he stone cold busts these people. All right, this is just a short article. A sudden and an unusual surge of 15,000 new followers has been recorded on Benjamin Netanyahu's Instagram account since Friday. All right, this was like this week, May 31st. The move has sparked suspicion among many online users who are questioning whether this reflects a genuine and unexplained burst of popularity for Netanyahu, or maybe artificial bots created and purchased to create that impression. Now, remember, we've talked extensively about how much money they put into Hasbara and how they've hired Brad Parscale and Clock Tower X to create online campaigns and generate influencers, pay influencers and basically push all this nonsense propaganda, right? The spike in follower numbers was first reported by network researcher Gil Feldman, who runs the Existing Situation, a data analysis and processing project that monitors discourse on social media and focuses on exposing manipulation. I'm guessing that he's also exposed some people that we like, and maybe he's not right all the time, but this analysis seems to be spot on. I don't know much about him, but this analysis, like I said, seems to track. According to posts published by Feldman on Twitter, 6,000 followers were added to Netanyahu's account at once on Friday, almost all of whom don't appear to be linked to real people. Nah, you don't say. Over the weekend and through Sunday morning, another 9,000 followers were added to the account. For comparison, former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and National Security Minister Ben Gvir gained an average of 9 to 12 followers per hour over the weekend, while Netanyahu's account was adding 302 followers per hour or more. All right? They're all being bot inflated. Nobody is following Naftali Bennett, and nobody is following fucking Ben Gvir at a rate of 12 followers per hour. There ain't that many Zionists left that don't know these fucking guys. Come on. The practice among politicians, public figures, and celebrities of purchasing fake followers, effectively digital bots, to create an appearance of popularity and traffic isn't unique to Netanyahu. Again, understatement of the night. Inflating follower numbers is not classified as an advertisement or sponsored content, but merely as a manipulation of platform metrics. An existing Israeli law doesn't really address it directly, so they can manipulate it. All right. And of course, we remember the AI Bibi bullshit coffee thing where the coffee didn't move when he did. And this is totally crap, where he's got no lines on his forehead. All right. It's funny that they use that picture for him of all things. During recent election campaigns, several petitions were submitted demanding that the Elections Committee require parties to declare that they were not operating networks of fictitious profiles and bots. However, in various rulings, the committee determined that, despite the severity of the phenomenon, the chair of the Elections Committee has no legal authority to investigate or initiate independent reviews of technological profile activity unless unequivocal evidence of violations of election propaganda is presented. Loading up your follower base is propaganda in itself, I would imagine, but apparently they've determined that it's not. Purchasing fake followers, likes, or comments is broadly prohibited across all major social media platforms, which are authorized to remove fake accounts. But of course, we know they all have a lot of influence within the halls of all of these social media companies because of the former amounts of IDF personnel and Unit 8200 people that literally are on in the executive positions across Google, Meta, X, every single one of these platforms, TikTok, you name it. All right. So usually when such activity is discovered and found to violate the platform rules, the companies usually proactively delete the bot accounts unless they're actually being paid for. At times, the algorithm also penalizes the purchasing account, causing its content to stop appearing in the feeds of real followers or in search tabs. In cases of repeated violations or particularly large-scale purchases, the platform may shut down and permanently delete the account without the possibility of recovery. In which case, like Boiler Room, they set up a new one across the street in 5 minutes. In the U.S., the FTC has already ruled that selling fake followers violates consumer deception laws, and heavy financial penalties have been imposed on companies that sold bots. Good luck finding them. Good luck catching someone admitting that they're buying them. I know what's-his-name did that recently and caused a whole big stir, Clavicular, or whatever the hell his dumbass name was, saying that they were basically buying bots to be able to pay him for activity on Kick. And that was how he was doing this. This shit makes me so angry because what it does is it floods the zone for the people that are doing the real work like us. It makes it impossible for some people to tell the difference because, it floods the feeds. And when people only have a limited amount of scroll time, they see what they see. They can't really even control that unless you're blocking those specific accounts, and you have new ones that are popping up all the time. On top of it, the companies that are hiring these people, for the most part, are fly-by-night companies that are set up to be shut down in case they get caught and have that entire operation set up across the street the next day. And anyone who's seen the movie Boiler Room knows what I'm talking about. All right. Fuck Israel for that, because, of course, they're trying to influence all of social media, and they're not the only ones by any stretch, by buying fake followers and bots to inflate their numbers. But when they're doing it so flagrantly, like that's crazy. And nobody seems to be calling them out on it. But, of course, their own people do. This is, again, from an Israeli paper, not from anywhere else. I didn't see anybody else talking about the fact that Netanyahu added 15,000 followers over a weekend. What difference does it make? The problem is that a lot of these people in Hollywood at an executive level and in the marketing world look at number of subscribers, whether they're real or not. Like, your follower count is as much a social credit score right now in a lot of people's minds as anything else, regardless of how you got it. And there are some people that don't know anything about any of this shit and don't realize that people buy fake followers. And wow, Netanyahu gained 15,000 followers. Wow, people must like it. You have to think about the average person that's doing this shit. They're not sophisticated enough to figure this stuff out, and they're being played. Finally, I want to implore you guys to watch this hour and 20-minute live stream replay that happened last week between BetBeat Media and Vanessa Beeley and Professor David Miller, where they talked about pretty much this. The hatred you think is organic is actually manufactured, specifically about rage bots and about Brad Parscale and Clock Tower X and how, the lobby tried to silence David Miller. Right. But they failed. And again, excellent hour 20. So I definitely recommend everybody go check out Vanessa, Indie Media Award honoree Vanessa Beeley. All right. With David Miller and Peter and Kareem over at BetBeat. Good dudes. I love those guys. All right. That was a shorter Fuck Israel because we're going to get into more in a minute. But man, and again, I could have done an entire 2 hours just about the crap they're pulling all over the world. And these are just snippets that come across my feed that I kind of feel like almost fall through the cracks because there's so much that's happening that it's impossible to absorb it all. It's why I set up IndieNewsNow.com to begin with. because I feel like it's a big fire hose of all the articles coming in. And to take all that in, and Israel Palestine News is another outlet that does a phenomenal job of aggregating all of this stuff daily. And there's so much to go through. Oh my God, between Syria and Lebanon and what's happening with the flotilla participants and what's happening here. You know, you had that whole Israel Day parade and Smotrich marching in the parade. Why did you have a Nazi basically marching in a New York City parade? Why is a war criminal allowed to fly here and being welcomed? What happened, Zoran? Anyway, support independent media because we need it more than ever. People who are on that screen already have, and we love them all. Appreciate every single one on there. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. John H. did that the other night. Code-v.com/Indie News Network will actually pop something up on screen while we're live. PayPal.me/Indie News Network eliminates the fees with friends and family. Patreon.com/Indie News Network for monthly. And then we're over on Substack at IndieMediaToday.com, live over there right now. Hello to the people if anyone's watching over on Substack. And then if you are, say something and put it in chat. Tell me you're not a lizard person. And then INNNewsletter.com is the network's newsletter that you should definitely subscribe to over on Substack. And of course, our website, IndieNewsNow.com, where we host independent media. We're 24/7 news feed, streaming live whenever INN's live, merch store, and way to tip the network through Stripe link. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Okay. We're getting to the Medhurst stuff. Man, has anyone been paying attention to what this man has been up to? Richard has had a very interesting couple of years. And Richard is one of the people that, honestly, you know, he brought me his coverage brought me from shit livery into really being independent and trying to analyze things from a nonpartisan way after I had gone none of the above. His coverage of the Assange trial in 2020 was monumental. His daily coverage of the Old Bailey trial and subsequent analysis about what would happen in Gaza when Shireen was shot and murdered, when the media building in Gaza was taken down by Israel, from what happened after October 7th, and everything that's transpired since. He's been sanctioned, allegedly, in 2 countries. Allegedly, the sanctions in the UK have now been dropped, but there are, I guess, still pending charges in Austria against him, where he lives. I don't know, but it's for his reporting. They claim that he's a member of an organization that they don't like. So he was restricted for a long time. They've been trying to crack into his devices. He's been talking heavily about protecting your devices and protecting the software, but it starts with the hardware. That if you use an Apple or a Samsung or a Google-owned device, you're already shot, because embedded within the hardware are ways for them to be able to backdoor and unlock to get to your data. He's talked about this graphene operating system. And anyway, Richard has been doing this independently for a while. He also does work with Press TV, which is Iran State TV. He's done some documentaries and things with RT in the past. As an independent, you know, again, like it's really hard to survive on your own. And he's done it pretty well. There are certainly some questions. There have been some questions about how he's managed to survive all this time. And, you know, everyone's got their own, got their own opinions about that. But he put out this article and this documentary about his analysis about what's happening globally from the U.S. perspective and from everywhere else. But looking at it, at the entire chessboard from a 50,000-foot view, disconnect yourself from the emotion of it all. What's actually happening here? So I'm going to start with this tweet where he said that this was, again, on May 1st. He had already published this video a couple of weeks before. It was getting some traction. But he said, while everyone watched in Iran, Washington quietly finalized Nord Stream's replacement, Poseidon. Most people haven't even heard about the Poseidon pipeline. 4 gas deals in 4 months. $3 trillion. He said he spent weeks on these maps and this investigation to expose the U.S. agenda in Iran and globally. And what he's talking about here is, here's Nord Stream going through Russia and into Germany and into Eastern Europe. And here is this new pipeline, this Poseidon, all right, that pretty much mirrors in length and is going to end up in the same place, delivering gas into Europe. That's the plan. So I want to watch this. I want to show this video. I'm going to pause it a few times.
The war in Iran,
but I think it's really important for everyone to absorb this. And again, 33 minutes and 43 seconds, not 33. But really important to understand what's happening worldwide, context-wise, because there's a lot of things here that haven't really been presented that I saw other than from him in this way. So watch this.
The war in Iran is much larger than anyone seems to grasp. True, the United States are being humiliated on the battlefield by Iran, losing not just their F-35s and radars, but their military prestige. But in the background, the United States have quietly been carrying out an armed robbery of the world's oil and gas supply. In the last 3 months alone, the US have hit Russian tankers, refineries, crippled China's oil supply, captured the world's largest oil fields, and kidnapped and assassinated 2 heads of state. We are witnessing the transition of the United States from an empire.
I'm sorry, everyone. I'm a fool. That would help to actually put that on screen. Yeah, that would make sense. What happened? How did I not do that? Let's start this over. I'm backing up.
The war in Iran is much larger than anyone seems to grasp. True, the United States are being humiliated on the battlefield by Iran, losing not just their F-35s and radars, but their military prestige. But in the background, the United States have quietly been carrying out an armed robbery of the world's oil and gas supply. In the last 3 months alone, the US have hit Russian tankers, refineries, crippled China's oil supply, captured the world's largest oil fields, and kidnapped and assassinated 2 heads of state. We are witnessing the transition of the United States from an empire into a pirate state, and the birth of what I call the petro-gas dollar, or the LNG dollar. In the past, the United States were very sensitive to oil shocks. Something like the Strait of Hormuz being closed would be a catastrophe because the United States simply couldn't produce enough oil to meet demand. So if oil prices spiked, you would see the dollar crash and everyone run to gold.
It's unreal. Isn't this disgusting? Why doesn't anybody contact the president?
Today, the situation is completely reversed. Oil and gas prices are through the roof, yet the US dollar is surging, and gold is suffering its worst crash in 40 years. See, the United States of 2026 is not the United States of 1973. Today, the US is the world's top producer of oil, gas, and refined products, and the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. They're completely self-sufficient. The problem is, even if you're the #1 producer, you still need a market to sell to. And if you want a monopoly, you need to kill the competition.
The Russian economy is vulnerable. 80% of Russian exports are in oil, gas, and minerals. You want to depend more on the North American energy platform, the tremendous bounty of oil and gas that we're finding in North America. You want to have pipelines that don't go through Ukraine and Russia.
No one would buy expensive American gas as long as cheap Russian gas existed, so the United States simply killed off the alternative to create a captive market.
There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
Blowing up the Nord Stream pipelines, the US didn't just hurt Russia, it also turned Europe into a permanent US client. The cheap gas was gone forever, and Europe was now forced to buy American LNG at 10 times the price. This greatly benefited US corporations and helped secure the US dollar for the time being against BRICS, de-dollarization, and the multipolar world, as governments were now forced to get rid of their euros to the point they became more worthless for the first time in 20 years than US dollars. The US had successfully turned its closest ally into an energy colony, bleeding them dry to keep the dollar alive. The US went from supplying just 9% of Europe's energy before Ukraine to being Europe's #1 source of coal, oil, and LNG, not just at Russia's expense, but eating half of Qatar's LNG share in the process. After the United States, Australia, closely followed by Qatar, are the world's largest suppliers of LNG and America's biggest competitors. But the US is now at full export capacity. They can't physically ship enough of their own gas to satisfy.
Okay, that's really important because nobody really has been talking about natural gas. Everybody talks about the oil market, but natural gas is what Europe has been using for its heating oil the last couple of years, the last few years. So it's been relevant when it comes to Ukraine, but the rest of the world, nobody's really been talking about the global gas trade. So watch this.
By the market that they just cleared. The empire realized that they didn't actually need to build more infrastructure to win. They just needed to delete the competition. Again. Just as Washington used the cover of the Ukraine war, sanctions, and the Nord Stream bombings to force Russia out of Europe, they similarly used the cover of the Iran war to finish off Qatar's position as a global LNG player. By forcing Qatar to declare force majeure and then triggering the retaliatory strikes on Ras Laffan, Washington took the world's largest gas field out of the picture, crippling Iran and sidelining Qatar in one fell swoop. There is no doubt the US and Israel provoked this because they had spent up until this point 3 weeks bombing Iran, gauging their responses, and Iran had made it explicitly clear that it was now an eye for an eye.
همانطور که قبلا اخطار داده بودیم بلافاصله کلیه زیرساخت‌های نفتی اقتصادی و انرژی متعلق به شرکت‌های نفتی در سراسر منطقه
throughout the region that either have American shares
by
or
crippling even
bases.
partially Qatar's LNG capacity, they forced them to cancel their cheap long-term contracts. While the US remains shielded, this sent LNG prices soaring, forcing Europe and Asia to bid on the spot market for US gas at exorbitant prices, and would position the US as seemingly the only reliable supplier of energy in an unstable world. This timing is perfectly in line with the US-Israeli grab of the Levantine Basin. This is one of the largest gas fields in the world, right off the coast of Syria, Palestine, and Lebanon. Its proximity to Europe would allow Washington to keep selling their overpriced LNG by sea, while also replacing piped Russian gas entirely. In that vein, Israel and US company Chevron recently signed a $35 billion gas deal, for which they began laying the groundwork 2 years before the Gaza genocide.
To move away from Russia and diversify
Why would Egypt even bother signing a deal with Chevron? It's a good question. I still don't have an answer to
trustworthy suppliers.
As the US began their global energy blitzkrieg in late 2025, they timed everything perfectly. First the Gaza ceasefire in October, then a month later the Board of Peace, and a month after that, the gas deal.
את עסקת הגז הגדולה בתולדות ישראל. היקף העסקה עומד על 112 מיליארד שקלים. העסקה הזאת היא עם חברת שברון האמריקנית. יש לה שותפות ישראליות.
Chevron would handle the gas deals and extraction. Meanwhile, the Board of Peace would serve as the front organization for the takeover. This corporate body was railroaded through the United Nations Security Council to provide the legal cover for Washington's colonial plan. A plan which China and Russia dubiously and inexplicably let pass. A closer examination of Resolution 2803 reveals nothing more than a fleeting mention of, quote, water, electricity, and sewage, unquote. The word energy doesn't appear once in the entire document. Then, out of nowhere, at the first Board of Peace summit, we see an oil and gas rig slapped right on the corporate advertisements of New Gaza. This, coupled with the timing of Israel's gas deal and the fact that only Chevron operate in this area, lead us to the only logical conclusion that they plan on robbing the gas fields in the Gaza Marine. In the meantime, the US plan to topple the Syrian government had finally worked out, so Chevron wasted no time in moving on Syria's oil and gas, laying the groundwork for yet another energy deal in the Levantine Basin just 8 weeks after their takeover of Gaza's resources. This energy...
Well, why? Well, obviously, because he's a puppet. But notice they've already got Jolani signing deals with Chevron months into him taking over the country, allegedly.
Takeover in the Levantine Basin was formalized at the very same moment that Chevron were making off with Venezuela's oil on the other side of the planet and with the protection of the US Navy. And it was barely 3 years ago that Israel sent a massive FPSO ship to try and take Lebanon's gas from the Karish field, only retreating to diplomatic talks once the resistance threatened to sink the vessel. Now, controlling Europe and weakening Russia was just the first stage. The real target is China.
It's China.
China is too big and competitive to destroy. The goal is to control it. By cutting off their most vital fuel sources, the United States want to force China to buy American oil and gas. This guarantees the dollar's survival and makes China dependent on Washington. This also makes it more difficult in the long term to fully de-dollarize, and it weakens BRICS, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the idea of a multipolar world. China receives around 1/3 of its oil from Venezuela, Russia, and Iran combined. Beijing considers these countries not just to be sources of oil, but
Okay, so when you talk about controlling the energy flow to the largest population in the world, that's an act of war. Whether it's already war. I mean, it's already happening.
Strategic partners. In the last 90 days alone, the United States proceeded to target all 3 of those lifelines with increasing escalation. First, the United States deployed a fleet to the Caribbean under the pretext of fighting narcotics. They then kidnapped President Maduro and seized Venezuela's oil, the largest oil fields in the world.
Between Venezuela and us, we have 62% of the world's oil.
80% of Venezuela's oil exports used to go to China. This accounted for 4% of China's oil imports, specifically the heavy crude that China's teapot refineries require in order to make the diesel that is used for China's high-tech industries. Russia provides 17% of China's total oil imports. While some of it is piped, most of it reaches China by sea. This includes the heavy medium Urals blend that China's teapot refineries also run on. Despite the extensive pipe network on land, most of this is shipped via Russia's western ports in the Baltic Sea. The US knew that China would immediately look to Russia to replace that oil, so they moved that same fleet to the North Atlantic in order to cut them off. As a matter of fact, during the last months, the United States and their allies began systematically hunting down Russian oil and gas ships, not just in the North Atlantic, but across the entire planet. Particularly after the war in Iran began, we've seen an uptick in Russian tankers and LNG ships being blown up or pirated all the way from the Caribbean to the North Atlantic to the Mediterranean.
Look at that. He glazes over this, but this is important. All right. This is all within a series of a couple of months. All right. U.S. seizes Russian flagged oil tanker in North Atlantic and second tanker. Olena tanker in the Caribbean. Ukraine says it hit a $200 million military icebreaker in a mass drone attack. All right. All of these have been happening already. Again, we are already in the middle of World War III, and this is the proof.
To the Black Sea, Baltic Sea. This explains why Donald Trump wants Greenland and Canada so much, and why the Royal Navy deployed a carrier strike group just last month to the Greenland-Iceland-UK corridor.
Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland.
The goal is to target Russian tankers and fuel ships and corner them in the Baltic and the Arctic corridor before they're even able to leave. During the last weeks, we haven't just seen the largest amount of attacks on Russian ships, but also on Russian refineries and export hubs, including Russia's 3 primary Western export hubs and several of their top refineries. As a result, around 40% of Russia's seaborne oil export capacity had been disabled. That's the most severe oil disruption in modern Russian history. While these strikes were officially claimed by Ukraine, they could have...
See, who's reported that the Russians have had a massive disruption to their own oil industry and that 40% of their export capacity has been taken out? I have not heard that analysis anywhere else except here. That's fascinating stuff, if true. I would imagine it is, because they're not refuting it.
Only been carried out with US backing, permission, and equipment. The United States are clearly establishing a massive global oil blockade against Russia and China. The reason the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor was precisely because the United States imposed an oil embargo on them. Russia and China are much more powerful than Japan was at the time, so I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss the possibility of this potentially turning into an actual world war if it continues to escalate. Now, Iran export around 60% of the oil they produce, and like Russia and Venezuela, they export most of it to China at a discount. Iran make up around 11% of China's seaborne crude imports.
Okay, again, stopping that so you can actually absorb it and not just go past it. Most of China's strategic oil imports are not coming from here, but you're talking about a large chunk of it, which it now needs to replace somewhere else, and they want it to come to us because that now becomes our negotiating leverage with China going forward in that relationship, because we're losing the rest of our leverage is what this is admitting.
Since President Maduro was kidnapped, China has sought to replace the loss of Venezuelan crude with higher volumes of Russian and Iranian imports, making a reliable, steady supply all the more critical. As Iran control the Strait of Hormuz, these ships shouldn't usually have any problems getting through and would in fact be prioritized as China is a strategic partner. However, the very nature of a war ensures chaos. Iran's experimental toll system, like all infrastructure, is being systematically disrupted by the US-Israeli attack, resulting in a crippling backlog. Moreover, in dealing with a pirate state, the threat level from Washington has reached irrational and unprecedented levels, as evidenced by the assassination of Khamenei and the torpedoing of the Iris Dina.
Death and destruction from the sky, all day long.
The US are now operating as a pirate state. They needn't even enter the Strait of Hormuz and can simply lie in wait near Diego Garcia or across the Indian Ocean to ambush commercial vessels at will. Ultimately, pricing cargo in UN achieves nothing if the cargo keeps getting sunk by an irrational actor. For the time being, this means that all 3 strategic suppliers of Chinese oil are either out of action, under attack, or threatened by the United States. This is especially critical because the type of crude oil that China normally received from Iran, Russia, and Venezuela was a mix of heavy and medium blends. China's teapot refineries are designed with this kind of oil in mind, as they're able to break down the heavy, thick sludge and turn it into the diesel that powers China's high-tech industries. Russian and Iranian oil are chemically different from Venezuelan crude and easier to refine, but China receives them at such a discount that it actually makes it worth their while to refine them using the teapots. While China can recover in the long term and their energy consumption is diverse, solar and coal alone can't power their industrial base to its absolute potential. Even with massive reserves, these cannot compare in the long run with the impact of having a pirate state attack their three most valued energy partners in the span of 90 days. This oil is considered even more valuable when you take into consideration that it is sold to China at a discount, or in the case of Venezuela, as a form of debt repayment. Replacing this specific kind of oil at the same competitive price is practically impossible. This creates a cascade effect of sabotage on China's economy, of which the United States is undoubtedly acutely aware of. To add insult to injury, the US has rerouted this heavy crude to its own Gulf of Mexico refineries, increasing its own profit margin, and then compounding further on its profits by exporting the light shale oil that the United States normally produces at wartime prices to Europe and Asia. Furthermore, the US are now using the control of the world's largest oil fields to threaten Cuba with regime change. Half of Cuba's energy grid...
But why? That's the other thing that I don't really necessarily understand here, other than the fact that Cuba's a Russian ally. But this is weird. Again, I know that we've always had this thing about Cuba for years. It's 90 miles off our coast, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it's plunged Cuba into darkness, which you're going to see.
Oil from Venezuela. Immediately after kidnapping Maduro and taking control of the oil, the United States cut Cuba off, plunging its power grid into darkness. This shows that capturing Venezuela's oil wasn't merely about corporate greed, but for strategic geopolitical purposes, as a leverage, as a weapon to use for regime change.
Turns out, but Cuba and us, we are talking. In the meantime, there's an embargo. There's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything.
Taking Cuba, I mean.
Why? Nobody ever explains, why are we doing this to Cuba? What are they doing to us? Are they attacking us? No, they're sending doctors all over the fucking world.
Whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth?
While the United States allowed a single Russian tanker to reach Cuba and issued a 30-day reprieve for Iranian and Russian oil, these shouldn't be mistaken for signs of de-escalation. They are only meant as pressure valves designed to stabilize the US dollar and global markets just enough in order to prevent a world war while Washington complete the hostile takeover. Following the strikes on the Ras Laffan refinery, the planet lost 20% of its LNG supply, which came from Qatar. Then, by some astronomical stroke of luck, Australia, the planet's second largest LNG supplier, is hit by a cyclone, taking half its hubs offline with shutdowns expected to last several weeks. Whether one buys that story or not, the result is the same. In the span of just 9 days, the United States' two largest competitors were taken off the board, sending LNG prices soaring for Europe and Asia. While Chevron and ExxonMobil take small hits in Qatar and Australia, they make back tenfold what they lost to disruption through the wartime prices exacted by the US. Russia and Iran are both Chinese allies, and they respectively have the largest proven reserves of natural gas on the planet. So you would think that they would be able to perhaps help China out in this situation. Well, the problem is that Iran consumes 94% of the gas it produces, and its ability to provide the remaining 6% was already taken out by the recent strikes. Now, Russia are already running their gas and oil pipelines, so that's Power of Siberia and ESPO respectively, at full...
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. 94% of what Iran was producing, they were consuming internally. They were only exporting 6% of the total gas that they were drilling. Really? I mean, I guess because of global sanctions, but I would guess that China was taking more than 6%. Plus, between China and Russia, again, there are some questions I have here. This is still a really well done video.
Capacity. Power of Siberia 2 is still years away from completion, and Russia lack the tanker fleet, Arctic class or otherwise, to help China make up for their losses, whose LNG imports, by the way, fell to an 8-year low during this war. Even if Russia could somehow procure the right vessels, US-backed strikes on Russian energy and tankers are now so frequent and severe that insurance premiums have skyrocketed, almost defeating the entire purpose of buying their oil at a discount. By hunting these ships, the United States are not just dismantling the strategic energy partnerships that these countries have built with each other over the years, but also destroying the very infrastructure that they use to trade with one another, from the ships to the export hubs to the refineries, forcing China to buy that missing oil and gas from the United States, because they're the only option, on the spot market, at exorbitant prices, and here's the final cherry on top, in US dollars. Think about the level of criminality that's going on here. So China has to dump its own yuan to buy the dollars needed to pay the very country that just sabotaged its energy security. They're losing their industrial competitive edge while literally funding the United States' takeover of their own economy. And in a move of incredible timing, the same day that the European Union banned Russian spot gas, that was the day Qatar's LNG supply was taken out. This date was known in advance, and I would have a very difficult time believing that the United States and Chevron were unaware. So in an emergency, like right now, when there's no Qatari LNG, there's no Australian LNG, and prices are through the roof, the European...
So wait, it's really important what he just said there was basically that we coordinated basically at Chevron's behest, effectively, so that they ended up the benefactors, all right, that on March 18th, which happened to be the day that Europe prohibits an import of gas, that's when they provoke Iran to the point that they then retaliate against Qatar and take out all the Qatar gas. And now all of a sudden we're the only ones left. And then the magical cyclone that happened in Australia, I don't know how often cyclones happen there, but we certainly have weather manipulation machines that could have caused something like that if we wanted to. I don't know if that's what happened, but it's really weird that a cyclone happened there at that exact time when it needed to. Let's go back.
There's no Qatari LNG, there's no Australian LNG, and prices are through the roof. The European Union, as well as China, have to join a bidding war for US gas. So the United States, once again, have thought this through and ensured a cascade or a multi-layered system of gains. They not only benefit by stealing oil and stealing gas and then driving up the prices and forcing their competition to buy from them, they also win because by making energy expensive everywhere else, they deindustrialize Europe and Asia. That means European companies and Asian companies, that includes industrial giants like Mercedes, like Toyota, like Siemens, are moving to the United States just to keep their factories running. This creates a flight of capital and deindustrializes the United States competitors. And once that capital gets to America...
Not just to keep their factories running, but also to ensure that they're buying less expensive gas that does not have to be transported halfway across the world at premium prices. That's what he's talking about for the piracy.
And is injected in the US economy, very difficult to get it out. So once again, multi-layered gains. By making energy unaffordable everywhere.
See, I think that it's not going to be very difficult to get it out. They may start to build plants here, but what will happen is the minute that an administration change happens and we are not continuing to be the bully of the world, that they're going to pull back and immediately stop doing business here, start building, putting their money locally and elsewhere, because they're going to want to take us out because of the extortion racket. Now, the other thing is and he showed this before, and I'll ask this question later on.
The U.S. not only guarantee their own energy security, but global energy dominance and the position of the U.S. dollar.
So my other question is, why does China, knowing what's about to happen, not take out specifically Diego Garcia, which is the base outside the Strait of Hormuz, that also can control the oil that could potentially go to them? If they use drones, suicide drones, to take out that base, what happens? I don't know. But if I were them and I knew what this was playing out, why wouldn't I do that? What do you got to lose? I don't know.
This racket goes even further. See, the US operate what is essentially a mobile taxi service for gas. Most of Russia's gas, for example, or Norway's gas is in pipelines. The United States puts its gas on ships, and those ships are in the ocean, they're mobile, and they can turn around mid-journey and change course to whoever is willing to pay the most. As a matter of fact, that's precisely what they're doing right now. It's a maritime extortion network. Even worse, the Maritime Action Plan, which was introduced just last month, forces everyone doing business with the US to switch to US-made ships. That includes the entire fleet of LNG traders, meaning everyone who's exporting LNG from the United States to the rest of the world. And that's a lot of ships, given that the United States now has a dominant share in Europe and will likely corner the rest of the market. It also includes anyone bringing cargo into the United States. For example, the refineries, they bring in crude oil. Around 40% of refined products in the United States are made using crude oil from other countries. So you have the choice of investing in an American naval shipyard and buying a US-made ship, or you get punished and pay the tax. Either way, you're going to pay Uncle Sam something. Finally, Donald Trump announced he'll be offering what is essentially a bodyguard service via the US Navy in order to protect ships at a, quote, very reasonable price, unquote. So this adds the final layer to the monopoly in the form of a protection racket. So all of this gives the United States several revenue streams, making money at every single point of the process and controlling it as well. All of this is part of the Monroe Doctrine. People have a fundamental misreading of this and think that it's a copy of the Monroe Doctrine. What the United States have in mind is not simply control of the Western Hemisphere. It's about moving to the Western Hemisphere the planet's energy corridor, So to get your oil and gas, you now have to go to the Gulf of Mexico or through Washington rather than the Middle East. So the US accomplished this by using their dominant market position, by killing off the competition, quite literally, and then transplanting the planet's industrial base to their own soil. So as this rat race unfolds, where everyone is scrambling to move their factories to the United States just to keep the lights on, and scrambling to buy the last scraps of gas and oil at 10 times the price. This provokes a massive flight of capital to the United States, deindustrializing and effectively cannibalizing their so-called allies in the Gulf, Europe, Asia, which strengthens the dollar, for the time being, in a last-ditch attempt to save US hegemony. And the final act, the US boards up the exits and uses its navy to harass, disrupt, and pirate as it pleases across the planet. Chaos is the model. For the time being, it appears to be working. The question is for how long? In the past, the petrodollar was too dependent on political events in the Middle East. So by doing this, the United States can control everything without having to rely on bases in the Middle East, whether that's Israel or the Gulf kingdoms or actual US Army bases. So the United States produce the world's oil and gas on their own soil. The rest of it, they simply steal from Venezuela, just next door, or from other countries, and then bring it over and control it via Washington. And then force everyone to do business via Washington and build their ships in the United States. And when it comes to the oil that's left over in the Middle East or that exists elsewhere, the United States realized after Ukraine that they don't need to invade Russia and physically control their oil fields and their gas. All they have to do is keep Russia out of the market in order for them to corner it. That's precisely what they're doing now. By making it inaccessible, it drives up the prices and makes America the only option where you can even buy the gas to begin with. The United States have such a dominant position in natural gas that when they start wars, consumer prices barely even flinch. But that same gas in Europe and Asia rakes in a fortune. When it comes to oil, prices do go up in the US, but far less than they do in Europe and Asia. They have to sell their euros and their yuan in order to buy dollars, in order to buy the oil and gas. So they're not only paying through the nose, but they're weakening their own currencies. Whereas American consumers will be disgruntled at the pump, but the money is still pocketed by US energy giants, meaning it never leaves the US economic circuit. From Wall Street or the empire's point of view, as long as there aren't pitchforks outside, it's a win-win-win situation. Exxon...
Well, I think that you're going to see pitchforks outside as gas hits $10 a gallon. I think because he is in Europe, he's underestimating the anger of the American public at just how much our gas and natural gas and petroleum costs have gone up. Businesses are freaking out. Restaurants freaking out. Cost of food, cost of everything. It's fucking our economy just as badly as it is everybody else's.
Mobil, Chevron, Cheniere, and other US energy giants are raking in their biggest profits in history as we speak. Their share valuations are at all-time highs. They have never had it so good. Although for this war, Chevron CEO seems to think the oil prices are still a bit too low. I guess they could always do better, can't they? Everywhere you look throughout this hostile takeover, you'll find the fingerprints of Chevron. They have a finger in every pie. In the United States, in Australia.
Now remember who Trump's first Secretary of State was. It was Rex Tillerson from ExxonMobil. So oil and gas has always been alongside a Trump administration. My other question is, what happens when there's no Trump? Are the Republicans going to continue this bullying plan of the entire world? I don't see anybody with the balls to do it.
In Qatar, in the Levantine Basin, in Cyprus, in Venezuela. As a matter of fact, Chevron ships are the only ones that are allowed to leave Venezuela with their tankers full. But if the CEO is saying oil prices aren't high enough, well, clearly world domination and control of the world's energy supply is not everything it's cracked up to be. So next time you're paying double at the pump, spare a thought or even a prayer for the CEO of Chevron, whose life must be so difficult right now. The strategy is very simple. Produce so much gas and oil that you are self-reliant and have it in abundance. Force everyone to buy your energy by blowing up their infrastructure. And if anyone else tries to sell their own oil and gas, you just steal it in transit or disable their refineries or blow out their industry. So this makes you de facto the only option, giving you a total monopoly. In 1944,
Again, how long are other countries going to tolerate you blowing up their infrastructure before they start retaliating?
Woods established the current global capitalist financial order. The US dollar was pegged to gold until the 1970s, at which point it was then removed and unofficially pegged to Gulf oil, creating a petrodollar. Today, we're witnessing another revolution where the United States is decoupling from Gulf oil and pegging the dollar to its own domestic gas and oil production, as well as the reserves that it's stolen, of course, creating the petrogas dollar. This is far stronger because Europe's survival depends on having the dollar now in order to keep the lights on. And it looks like Asia's will too very soon.
It's incredible. We have such great, we're number one in oil by double now. We drill, baby, drill. would double any other nation, and it's going to be soon triple any other nation, and that doesn't...
You know, we all thought Sarah Palin was dumb for saying drill, baby, drill. And here's this fucking moron.
Include Venezuela, who's been great. By the way, the relationship with Venezuela has been fantastic. Millions, literally millions of barrels of oil are being taken out.
So in BRICS countries...
Yeah, how does the Venezuelan public feel about that? Oh, we have a great relationship with Venezuela. Great relationship. Great.
Countries wanted to de-dollarize during the last years. The United States realized that they needed a way to save the dollar. After Ukraine, the sanctions and Nord Stream bombings pushed Russia to sell their oil and gas to Asia, which they priced in rubles. And after 2022, Russia, Iran, China, Venezuela all adopted new alternatives to SWIFT, such as SIPS, SPFS, and CPAM, as well as new payment systems like Mir and Shitab. Now, Iran are charging a toll for safe passage through Hormuz and even pricing it in yuan. They're also talking about nationalizing the Strait of Hormuz, just as Egypt did with the Suez Canal. These are all the right moves, geopolitically speaking. The problem is that for this to work, trade has to be physically possible. And if the United States are sinking or pirating the ships while they're in transit or attacking the refineries at the source in Russia or Iran, you can't de-dollarize. As a matter of fact, it'll probably make the dollar stronger because the shortage forces you to go and buy the missing oil and gas that you lost at sea from the United States in dollars. As a matter of fact, that's the whole point. That's the whole idea.
We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be.
So if BRICS countries and the Global South can't trade with each other, then they can't develop the Belt and Road Initiative either. By toppling governments in the Global South and keeping the region in a constant state of war, the United States ensure long-term damage and stagnated economic growth. Meanwhile, of course, the US industrial base remains untouched. Ousting Bashar al-Assad, for example, and destroying Syria's ports at Latakia and Tartus, in addition to infrastructure in Lebanon and Palestine, is what gave the United States and Israel control over the Levantine gas field. And it also ensures that the Silk Road, the new Silk Road, is never completed. Now, the Iraqi resistance, they've already...
I also don't believe that that will not happen. I think they will complete the new Silk Road.
Succeeded in kicking out the NATO occupation after more than 2 decades. And this is important because Iraq's railway connects Iran and China to Syria and the Mediterranean Sea. This is precisely why Iran's systematic dismantling of the US occupation bases in the region is so critical, but it won't be enough. If the United States is indeed moving to a more maritime or pirate-based model of raids and naval blockades and remote control chaos,
death and destruction from the sky all day long,
instead of land-based occupation, then the bases are no longer that relevant and the strategy has to shift. The US Navy are still parked outside of Venezuela and widening the global blockade. So what guarantee does anyone have that the US won't position another carrier strike group in the Indian Ocean and do the exact same thing? They say they want to take Karg Island, but they could also just set up near Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean and then sink any of the oil tankers or any of the commercial ships transiting past the Strait of Hormuz. And again, all the United States has to do from their perspective is deprive Iran and the Global South of being able to trade with each other and actually get oil from point A to point B, and then they will be well off.
We'll be hanging around. We're not going anywhere. We're going to make sure Iran complies with the ceasefire and then ultimately comes to the table and makes a deal. So we'll stay put, stay ready, stay vigilant. As the chairman laid out, our troops are prepared to defend, prepared to go on offense, prepared to restart at a moment's notice.
Purely from a game theory perspective.
Defend. Iran, wait. We're prepared to defend what? You mean if they attack you for sitting off their coast, which you would attack them for sitting off our coast? The double standard is insane. We can do whatever we want anywhere, no repercussions, and nobody can say shit. But nobody else can do anything unless we say so.
Need to make US piracy and US blockades so costly and painful that they leave. Alternatively, by doing the exact same thing the US is doing to Iran's industrial base, crippling their tankers, their refineries, etc., Iran can make the whole plan unfeasible. During the opening weeks of this war, Iran have been punching 10 times above their weight, taking on the US and Israel simultaneously. No one can doubt any longer the effectiveness of their drones, their ballistic missiles, their air defenses. They've been systematically degrading the crown jewels of the US Air Force, from their F-35s to their A-10s to Black Hawks to Reapers. As I've covered in my investigations, Iran have systematically neutralized billion-dollar radar arrays across US bases in the region at a fraction of the cost. Washington's claim that their largest warship, the USS Gerald R. Ford, had to flee the theater of war all the way to Crete because of a laundry room fire that destroyed 600 bunks and went on.
Yes, but it's also, we know the reports that the soldiers were literally stuffing their clothes down the toilets to take the fucking ship out because they didn't want to go to war. And then they got hit because they were right. Next.
For 30 hours is perhaps the biggest admission and all the confirmation we need that Iran successfully struck the flagship of the US Navy. We're reminded of how the Lebanese resistance shocked the world in 2006 by striking the flagship of the Israeli Navy. And they too have proven themselves on the battlefield today to be stronger than ever before. So while the final outcome still remains to be seen, These tactical victories have shattered the myth of US invincibility. And it stands to reason that if Iran can successfully take on the US Air Force and all their radars and bases in the region, then surely they can take on their Navy as well. And if Washington attempt to set up any pirate blockade the same way they did in Venezuela or in the Arctic, then they're not very likely to fare so well. The strategic value of this plan for the US empire is simply critical. It trumps all potential costs. Even being humiliated by Iran on the battlefield, or losing hundreds of thousands of troops, or having a disgruntled population is all worth the cost for Wall Street. The United States are transitioning from an aerial power to a naval power, fully cementing their status as a pirate.
That's insane, by the way. You understand that February 2026 America's Maritime Action Plan? That was literally put out by the White House. Okay. We reported 3 years ago that if they decide to do this, it is the death knell of the United States, because our aircraft carriers are really easy to sink. They're fucking massive moving targets. They can't move quickly enough, and you have all these drones that can take them out. Kit Clarenberg did a report a couple of years ago that we did on How Did We Miss That, where we read an article where he talked about the war game from 2000 that they war gamed out, sending an entire fleet to the South China Seas, and then within 3 weeks, the entire fleet was sunk. This is a guaranteed loser of a strategy.
Power to a naval power, fully cementing their status as a pirate state. If they're able to control others' economies, they may not even need to maintain their 800 bases. From a purely business perspective, when corporations find a more efficient way to do the exact same thing and save costs, they always go for it. So why wouldn't that apply in this case? None of these events are coincidences. None of these things happened by accident. They were all carefully planned at the highest levels of government and corporate America. This is the United States of tomorrow. It's a pirate state that is completely out of control and has only one goal in mind: world domination, control of everyone's resources, and the use of piracy, violence, and assassination in order to get its way.
Again, a fucking phenomenal, an absolutely phenomenal documentary from Richard. Go follow that. Go give it a like. I'll give it a like from the INN account. I already did for my own. All right. And then he backs it up with this article. Now, again, this was published on April 16th, April 10th. Okay. Then on May 1st, he publishes this extensive Substack article where he breaks it down in writing, everything that he just showed us there. Okay. Where he's got the graphics and he's got this, again, the timeline scrolling for you to be able to absorb this in your own time and at your own pace, because he does go very quickly. And I get that. But what's happened since is really fascinating. 3 days after he publishes the article, he says NATO explicitly said they're deploying to the Arctic to cut China off. He didn't even really talk about the Arctic there. This is officially stated in February. The UK said as much in March. We have a carrier strike group now deployed right now to the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap. It's insane that this gets no attention. People don't link it to Iran. Again, he's talking about controlling global shipping lanes. All right. And that is in response to this about how Operation Arctic Sentry openly stated that the goal is to sever Beijing's access to energy critical minerals and disrupt trade with Russia. It's an embargo. Again, these are all acts of war. This explains why Trump is so interested in Greenland and Canada. It's not just about using Greenland as a base to build a data center potentially, but it's also about having access to control the shipping lane, because they don't have access to control Greenland right now. They don't control Iceland right now. They certainly do have a lot of influence over the UK, because they should have thrown us out of that base a long time ago. All right. Also, May 28th, that was this week, the U.S. are now testing new drones in the Arctic. Many NATO armies are deployed there right now in preparation for the coming war over the transpolar sea route and gas. Again, remember that Richard said that the way that that oil gets from Russia to China is through the Baltic Sea. And not only that they take out some of the ports and the refineries near the Baltic, but they're also looking to control the shipping lane up there through that transpolar sea route. I see some new ones being used by Southcom too. Interestingly, this one looks like a helicopter. They recently added autonomous AI command now. So now nobody's even there. This looks like a toy age 1Z Viper Cobra. All right. Then he, again, in reply to this thing back in on May 28th, do you understand now why he talks about Greenland? The spat with Europe was all theater. NATO used it to move troops into position against Russia, China. They explicitly said this. Pirate oil, disrupt trade. It began the same way as the Iran war. No coincidence. But his point is that it's just so bloody awful how mainstream media can take this story, give you 1/5 of it, reduce a blockade, a strategic Cold War era choke point to Trump's ego. Of course, it's never imperialism or geostrategy. It's got to always be Trump, Trump, Trump. Right? Further, okay, that's the other one where he talks about Greenland. So this was, again, May 27th. The real manipulation of the oil market is that the U.S. choked off Russia, Iran, and Venezuela to sell American oil and gas, crippling the Middle East to supplant it with the Gulf of Mexico as the hub for global energy trade. From import dependence to energy dominance, Trump's flip-flopping is to distract from this heist. And again, he's showing these three really critical shipping lanes where we can exert dominance, control those areas, and stop everybody else's ability to trade without us getting a piece first. It's literally Mafia Don. Now, he also talked about Greenland, Cuba, Venezuela, oil, Western Hemisphere. To be fair, Trump has been putting the pieces out there, but nobody was connecting the dots until now. All right, our friend, another bread and circuses, but this is Casey. The rise in oil prices has benefited Russia as much as any Western oil cartel. Maybe, but they also had like 17 days of no internet, and they also were struggling in a lot of different ways. I got a couple of more. Don't expect the U.S. to leave Hormuz or Venezuela anytime soon. Compared to a year ago, the U.S. are exporting an extra 2 million barrels of crude and an extra 4 million barrels of fuel every single day. Record profits, record shares, record exports. They have Asia and Europe right where they want them. And again, I'm not 100% sure that that's necessarily true. I think that Asia and Europe are somehow in cahoots with all of this, because they would be stopping all of it if they had any idea that it was really this. Now, this happened yesterday, breaking another Russian tanker pirated, this time by UK and French navies. So now they're getting other NATO countries involved in our piracy. This is the other blockade, mainly in the Arctic, that runs parallel to the U.S. blockades against Iran and Venezuela. It's not about uranium or democracy. It's about oil and gas, and always has been. Again, talking about up here. So now you've got French ships and UK ships up here while we're dealing with here. The question's going to be, when is China going to attack here? Because I believe that strategically this is their move. They have to stop this. They have to, for their own sovereignty, so that their energy is not controlled by the United States, they have to do something. Here's somebody who's challenging, saying that the United States doesn't have the inventory to export this much. He gets sticking to your guns, but we're literally exporting from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve right now. In fact, by all indications, we will hit tank bottom within 6 weeks. Then all hell will break loose in the oil markets. I don't think so. I think right then they'll just go rob a store. They'll go rob Venezuela. They'll go rob another place. That's all. They'll just reroute it, like Richard said. One other thing here. Oh, yeah, by the way, nothing to see. The Pentagon just banned journalists from their press office, designated it a classified space. So on top of all of this, now you're not going to get the story from the military unless it's exactly what they want you to hear from a press conference. this is also part of the key, controlling the narrative. But again, my big question for all of this for Richard is, what happens when China decides to attack Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean and take that base out? And then we have no hub. We have nothing here. And we can't get relief there for weeks on end because it's so far from all the other places where we have stuff. And we're fully maxed out in what we have to deploy. It's a really interesting scenario to see how it plays out. Yeah, Arctic snow pirates is right, Greg. That's a perfect description for it. Full-blown conspiracy mode here, Rev Joe Blank. I was listening to something earlier that Greenland may be where the equivalent of the underground Atlantic exists. Maybe. Yes, and no, Kyle Kalinske. Yeah, a.k.a. Richie with the hair dye. I don't know what's up with the dyeing of the hair. Hey, man, everyone's free to do whatever they want to do. I'm much more interested in his analysis. Old man Barker, good to see you, sir. Topher, how are you? Man, there's so much to this, and it's still in the midst of playing out. And it's not going to get any better. Because nobody is trying to punch the bully in the mouth. Now, what's going to happen when they do try to punch the bully in the mouth is going to be fascinating. Are they going to be able to do it? Is China going to be able to withstand us squeezing their energy because they decide to take out Diego Garcia? That would be the response. And they manage without running on 20% less efficiency and their reserves. I think they probably can for a while. Fascinating to see how it's all going to play out. So, again, subscribe to Richard Medhurst. Support independent media. Support his channel. Okay? Richard Medhurst, he's over on, again, Patreon, PayPal, GoFundMe. He's on Rumble. He's on Substack and Twitter. I was a Patreon sub. I'm a Substack founding member of one of the first people that signed up when he first created one years ago. I've been a fan of Richard's for a long time. Now, one of the criticisms I've heard of this is that he is kind of seeing this as a battle where Russia and China might be the good guys versus the West, which are the bad guys, but they're all bad guys. Even Russia and China are bad guys. They're all trying to position to have themselves not be affected as much as possible by any of this. I don't see camaraderie happening anywhere in trying to team up to take out any of this. Now, the other big thing, again, is if China really wanted to, they could cut off Israel, which would be a major attack on U.S. and Western interests also. Stop shipping anything to Israel. Stop selling anything to Israel. And then stop selling anything to the United States as well. That's how they can. But then, of course, that's going to cripple their economy. We're one of the largest trading partners. It's a mess. People have gamed this out and spent months, years gaming this out, knowing or predicting how this is going to play out. It's just really interesting to see Richard's take as somebody who's never lived here in the United States, who's based in Europe, who has reported on the Iranian side from their perspective, as well as, been on Palestinian side. So he has certainly taken a position about global imperialism. The question is global imperialism really just one? Is it across all governments or just the Western governments that are orchestrating a lot of this right now? Okay. Now, I don't believe that the first commandment of BRICS is that thou must lick the balls of Putin and Xi. First of all, it would be Xi and Putin, because Xi is really the leader of BRICS and not Putin. But that's a whole other story for another time. But it's also, BRICS is effectively taken out by all of this. If they're not going to issue their own currency that's effectively the World Economic Forum of the United Nations without the Five Eyes, I don't see the long-term viability of that alliance taking out the United Nations, although it could also be used as a vehicle to create a world war against the Five Eyes that are creating this global piracy. It's really interesting to see how it plays out. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks. Certainly sound off in the comments below. Am I crazy? Is Richard crazy? I don't know. Either way, these people are not crazy because they support independent media and we love them and appreciate them. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. The best ways to do that, Cash App, $, Indie News Network is our handle. co-fi.com/Indie News Network, and you can give $5, $10, buy us a cup of coffee. PayPal.me/Indie News Network as friends and family. There's no fees. You can do it monthly on Patreon.com/Indie News Network. I think there's 3 levels. And then we have Substacks over at Substack, IndieMediaToday.com. That's where I publish daily. And we live stream there, this show. And all the clips from here are sent out every day of the week. And then also, follow me on Substack Notes, whatever. INN Newsletter is where we put out a weekly newsletter for the network. And there are 5 other podcasts for the network and the occasional original article happening there as well. And then we've got our website, IndieNewsNow.com. Really important because where do you go to get unfiltered, ad-free, independent news? From anti-war to all the other places that we look at. Richard Medhurst video, a lot of the things that you've seen today, Bet Beat Media, Vanessa Bealey, all found at Indie Media Today, ad-free as a 24/7 fire hose of news. All right. Really, again, and you can also tip there. There's a Keep the Media Free section, so you can support us there as well. Try to give you as many places as possible. Now, there are a few other things I want to talk about. We're going to get to our lightning round real quick. First off, I'm so glad my brother Robbie Yeager is back. On May 28th, he publishes this analysis because he has this CA target bot so that when there are new filings, he gets an alert immediately. So he's tracking when there are new expenditures filed with the FEC, when there are new donations to certain candidates. There's all kinds of stuff happening. So in this case, this is a 48-hour report of independent expenditures in the Thomas Massey Kentucky 4th PAC. Robbie is chasing dark money. And where is that money coming from? Now you're talking here almost $40,000 in the name of Ed Gallarain, right? To Hello Lamp Media. This is, I'm sorry, 39,600, but this is just one of them. Western Blue, a super PAC formed 3 days ago, drops $300,000 in support of Esther Kim Verrett in California 40. Interestingly, the vendor, Hello Lamp Media, has only one other customer that I could find. Kentucky 4th PAC, the Pro Massey Super PAC, we still don't know the donors of. So this is where they gave $39,000 to the Massey PAC, or against Massey in the name of Gallarain. Okay, now they dropped $300,000 in California 40. Nobody knows who they are. All right, now on top of that, I want to showcase, and I'm honored because he actually shared it with me. He gave me a little sneak preview of it because he said, INN's been super supportive of him in his coming back and everything, sharing all his articles and tweets and everything. He put together this article. It's 15,000 words. I'm not going to read it tonight. I'm going to link it for everyone so that you guys can read it. Or go to Yeager, JAEGER.substack.com. He put together this thing about the Clark Fork Group, a decade of dark money. And this is a massive investigation. I'm like, all right, give me the TLDR. Take me down to the bottom and let me read the last couple of paragraphs. So he said, for more than a decade, a recurring group of nonprofits, PACs, consultants, attorneys, and political operatives has built a durable political infrastructure capable of moving millions of dollars through federal and state elections across the country. The organizations change names. The committees change names. The political battles have changed, and the states even change. The infrastructure has endured. The people even change. Whether viewed through the lens of Government Integrity Fund in 2012 or the America Works Fund in 2026, the same underlying reality emerges. Money enters the system, organizations fund one another, political committees spend the money, new entities replace old ones, the cycle repeats. It's another boiler room setup, which emerged out of the Citizens United ruling. Unlimited corporate money. But in order to be able to do this well, people can't know where that money is actually coming from. So new names, they don't know. It's a lot easier to shield. All right. The full scope of the network may never be known. Nonprofits are not required to publicly disclose their donors. Many of the organizations discussed will likely continue evolving. Others will simply disappear and be replaced by entities that don't even yet exist. Future election cycles will produce new committees, new political fights, new financial relationships. All right, but after examining years of tax filings, campaign finance disclosures, business registrations, watchdog complaints, nonprofit records, one conclusion becomes difficult to escape. The story isn't about a single organization. It's about the machinery behind them, the system. And that machinery is still operating to this day. And that's really what this whole thing exposes. A current operating machine that it's literal political whack-a-mole, because new ones pop up and old ones disappear, new faces emerge, and you've got to have your head on a swivel and pay attention to all of it, and you're still not going to catch it all, is what he's saying. He spent months on this investigation. He also sent me a graphic that he loaded into one of these large learning models that breaks down who the players are, and it really maps it out beautifully. I'm not sure if he included it in the article. If not, reach out to me. I'll send it to you. Okay, next. Oh, there's a guy in chat that I wanted to showcase. And I'm so proud of my friend Joe Blank, the Reverend Joe Blank. There he is, golf clap. Okay. He didn't know I was going to be doing this, but Joe Blank wrote his first Substack article. Now, he's written a couple of articles over at Buy Me a Coffee. He has a Buy Me a Coffee where you can support him, but he decided to jump on the Substack bandwagon, probably because I was beating him up enough. All right. And he starts out by saying he's not a great writer. I disagree with him. He gave it up a long time ago, and he gets into his background of how he ended up where he is today, but how he ended up chasing this Ukrainian Nazi collaborator smuggled into the U.S. after World War II, probably as part of Operation Paperclip, have created racist enclaves in our country and developed influence over U.S. politics in the past 86 years. It's a fascinating read. I'm excited to read more from him. This, again, is a long piece, and it's a really good one. I read through it with Reef privately, and can we introduce Robbie to 7 Seas? Absolutely. I think that's a great idea, Greg. I could probably try to make that happen. All right. Can't believe we got Robbie receipts out of retirement. I don't know if I got him out. I think the world got him out, thankfully, and I was just there to pat him on the back and throw my arm over and be like, dude, yeah, let's do this. We never forgot about you. We appreciate you, man. Anyway, Joe Blank. So Joe wrote this article about Nazitown, USA, which is about a place in Wisconsin, a small town in Wisconsin, and some very disturbing, recurring racist or Nazi incidents. And then how that research has now expanded to reveal a 75-year partnership with Ukrainian Nazi collaborators, prominent American politicians, the Democratic Party, and connections to billions in Ukraine aid that our government has passed, of course, just since 2022. Really interesting stuff. I implore you to go read this article, and you will end up smarter as a result. Even though Joe would say that that's not true. I think that he is. So he breaks this down into segments. All right, he has no connections to Russia or Ukraine. He became curious since 2013, just before Maidan. And one day, a couple years ago, he stumbled across an article in the Wisconsin Examiner that started the whole affair. All right, this is talking about the Ukrainian Youth Association summer camp. Joe also wrote an article at Buy Me a Coffee about a Ukrainian 501c4 that is breaking the rules of what charitable organizations can support in raising money and sending drone stuff over to fight Russia. You're not supposed to use charitable stuff for acts of war and for weapons of war. And he has this all in his article. Again, go check that one out too over at his Buy Me a Coffee. It might even be the best way. Yeah, that's the least of it. Yes, I know that's the least of it. It's a massive investigation that I've tried to get several people to publish, but I'm like, dude, the information's in your head. So I would say that the best way to publish that is for you to do it, or to sit with someone and have them extract it from you who's a better writer. I don't know. Maybe we'll work on it together. All right, but go check out Nazitown USA at the blank pages. That's revjoeblank.substack.com. Here it is in the chats for everyone who wants to go check it out. But I will include it in the Substack that has all the links to everything that I've showed here tonight. I always have believed in documenting everything that I show and putting links into a Substack post. The one that actually announced this live stream and has all the links to the stream. All right. Finally, this one scared the shit out of me, and this was an audible I made at the last minute. This is about the inevitability of where AI takes us. Two economists just published mathematical proof that AI will destroy the economy. Not might, not could, will, if nothing changes. Here's what scares me. The paper's called The AI Layoff Trap, published March 2nd of this year. That means it's 90 days old already. People have already read this and either ignored it, dismissed it, or done nothing about it. This was published at the Wharton School, UPenn, Boston University, peer-reviewed, mathematically modeled. The conclusion is one sentence. At the limit, firms automate their way to boundless productivity and zero demand. This is what's really scary, because this is what's happening right now. An economy that produces everything and sells it to nobody. Here's how you get there. A company fires 500 workers and replaces them with AI. Their competitor fires 700 to keep up. Another one fires 1,000. Every company is behaving rationally because they're following the incentives correctly, and every company is, of course, building a trap for itself because the workers who were fired were also their customers. When they lose jobs faster than the economy can absorb them, they stop spending. Consumer demand falls. Companies respond by cutting costs, which means automating more workers, which means even less spending, which means even more falling demand, which means more automation. Sadly, this loop has no natural exit. The researchers tested every proposed solution. UBI, capital income taxes, worker equity participation, upskilling programs, corporate coordination agreements. Every single one failed in the model. The only intervention that worked at all, a Pajuvian automation tax, a per-task levy charged every time a company replaces a human with AI, forcing them to price in the demand they're destroying before they pull the trigger. There's just one problem. No government has implemented this. No major economy is seriously discussing it. And meanwhile, the numbers are already tracking the curve. 100,000 tech workers laid off last year. 92,000 more in the first months of this year. Jack Dorsey firing half of Block's workforce and saying publicly that within the next year, the majority of companies are going to reach the same conclusion? Nobody's doing anything wrong. Companies are following their incentives perfectly. That's exactly the problem. Rational behavior at scale, simultaneously, with no mechanism to stop it. These two economists built the math, but the math leads to one place. It's called the AI layoff trap. This scares the shit out of me. Because all of Wall Street that keeps cheering on when all these earnings keep going up and up and up and up and up, it's because they're all jerking each other off, making deals, $100 million, $100 billion deals to buy each other's chips to power stuff that doesn't really exist. Yeah, this is literally capitalism at its best. That's right, cookies. They're purposely trying to collapse the economy so they can force a digital currency. Sure, that's part of it. But then what? You don't have anything to transact if you don't with digital currency if you crash the economy. The farms are all out of business. You know, the factories that produce things will not be in business because the companies that make them will be bankrupt because they don't have customers. Scary shit. One final note in the and also tied into AI is the drawing the line in the AI line in the sand. Where do you draw the line? This was an IMA, Independent Media Alliance. For those who are not familiar, the Independent Media Alliance is like INN on steroids. It's everything I kind of hoped INN would at one point be. All right. They've got dozens, more than a dozen members, all with major platforms that all come together for these live streams to have roundtable discussions about major topics. And they're working on building out much more of an infrastructure. And it's the best of the best of the best. You're talking, again, T-Lab, The Last American Vagabond, and The Corbett Report, and Whitney Webb, and Kit Knightley from Off Guardian, okay, and Hakeem Anwar over at Take Back Our Tech, and that's Hervoye from Geopolitics and Empire, and Steve from AM Wake Up. All these people, Jason Burmis, all these people, and they all have different takes on it, and they've all been doing this a long time. So I encourage everyone. I'm more than an hour into my watch of it. Whitney was just leaving at that moment. She did not have enough time to be able to stay till the end. And then it gets a little spicy at one point. Burmis is like, I'm using it to argue with this, that, and that. And Whitney's like, why are you even doing that? You're helping them. You realize you're helping them. And Burmis is like, I don't know, man. I just get triggered. It's great. It's really entertaining to watch. It's something to see. And I don't know how Ryan does it in coordinating 10 people on screen. All right. That, to me, I usually glaze over when I see a panel this big. Like Saturday Night Anarchy, Greg. I love you guys, but I can't take it when there's that many people on screen. Because what happens is you end up sitting there for 40 minutes waiting for a chance to talk, and then you get 5 minutes, maybe, if you don't get cut off. And sometimes what you want to talk about, what you wanted to talk about a half an hour ago, isn't even part of the discussion anymore. Yeah, Burmis. Now I'm all joked up. Yep, that's right, Greg. But yeah, go watch this. It's ad-free at thecorbettreport.substack.com. Okay. It's also on Ryan's Rumble channel, a couple other Rumble channels, Corbett's Rumble channel. It was considered a solutions watch, which is one of the topics that Corbett puts out. He does one about tech stuff. I love the way Corbett operates. It's very systemic. Yeah, Joe Blank. What's Joe saying? That create a nothing product, sell it, and then sell the solution when it eventually fails. That's right, Cookies. Okay, make money on both ends. Hell, they probably make a profit from the short sell too. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised at all. Well, thank you. The Humanist Report. That's Mike Figueredo. Oh my God, I can't even remember the last time I saw that name. But thank you, Joe. And David Dull. Oh my goodness, we got David Dolt, right? That's the DNC apparatus. That's the sheep herding operation. Those fucking guys. That's where who we left behind. And I wish them all the best in propagandizing the world. All right. Yeah, and allegedly Corbett is very welcoming to newcomers, and his chat, unlike AM Wake Up, is not a mosh pit. It's a bunch of savages at AM Wake Up. I'm warning anyone that goes over there, and I'm there quite a bit. But I don't know. It's my people's anyway. Yeah. So that was our quick lightning round. We talked about Rob Yeager. We talked about Joe Blank. We talked about AI crashing the economy and the Independent Media Alliance panel. Then the only thing I have left to get to is our GoFundMes. Before we do that, support independent media because we need it more than ever. Those are the people who've already done so. Really appreciate that. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, patreon.com/Indie News Network for the monthly, over on Substack at IndieMediaToday.com or INNNewsletter.com. You can subscribe monthly or annually at either of those places. Okay, and then we've got IndieNewsNow.com. It's the name of the show. It's also the website where you can find a lot of the stories, articles, and videos that we showed here tonight. It is a fire hose that streams news 24. It imports news through an RSS feed 24/7, completely unbiased, filter-free, and no ads. And you can also get merch there. You can tip the network through the Stripe link. Keep the media free. All right. Like I said, I've got, we're getting to the end of the show. Yeah, cookies. I did want to show you, and I don't know if you were familiar with Words of Will, because you were not really ever much on Twitter. Will was mostly on Twitter, but he was on Discord quite a bit. And I think he used to be in the Hardlands chats. Will reach out to me this week and asked me just to retweet his GoFundMe. I'm not sure that he even knew that I do this every week on my show. But he said that, most of his reach is gone. So he sent me a message like, hey, can you help a brother out and share it for some reach? And I'm like, fuck, dude. He says, my wife has breast cancer and her job just cut her part-time. So she can't even get the insurance she was supposed to get in June. Now they're in a really bad situation with no insurance. So if you can share the link, it really helps. They got 2 boys. He was driving DoorDash. And now, again, he's caregiver for 2 kids. Plus, all right, so I shared this family's just getting started. Sharing helped so much early on. She was recently diagnosed, facing a tough fight while trying to keep some normalcy for her 2 young boys. All right. So her name is Elizabeth Wimmer. Okay, here's the GoFundMe. They've already raised almost $3,000, thankfully. It's been a couple days since they got their last donation. Yep, American healthcare system. What the fuck? This is what we do. This is we have to use our platforms to amplify the stories of the people that need it, the people that have been in our lives because nobody else is doing this for them, and it sucks, man. What a heartbreak to see this. And again, Elizabeth's own mother donating $1,000 to get the campaign, or somebody related to them to get the campaign going. It might be the mother-in-law. It might be Will's mom. But I saw this and it broke me. Parents should not have to go through this. And, so there's more pictures of the kids, and there's her with one of the boys and at the beach. Again, typical American family. There's our brother Will right there. And it just breaks your heart, man, that this happened. Again, we're trying to get them to goal $8,000 at least to start. Of course, they're going to need a lot more than that. But anything anybody can do, I appreciate. And I wanted to give a shout out and put this up, tell them how much we love them, and that there are people out there that do care and that will talk about this, and we will share this on a regular basis every week when we do this on the show. And of course, we haven't stopped talking about Natalia. Natalia is still sitting in ICE detention facility, and we talked about how ICE is making profits on a daily basis, keeping immigrants that are even scheduled to be deported locked up as their pending appeal. Now, why shouldn't she be allowed to stay in the country? She doesn't want to go anywhere. They're trying to hold her there to force her to be willing to self-deport, which she's not willing to do. She's fighting the appeal for deportation. and she's trying to appeal. She's fighting the order. She wants to stay here. She has asylum. She should be here. She was granted asylum, and she's being treated horribly in these ICE facilities. It's been 11 months. Why? Who benefits from this other than Geo Group or whoever the private prison company that operates the facility that she's in is making profits on a daily basis. They're being paid daily by ICE for this, like $150 a bed or something. Way more than they're ever spending on the people that they're imprisoning. Not detaining, imprisoning. We also want to talk about the Justice for Aspen GoFundMe. Aspen, it's now been a year. She got in the wrong car with the wrong people and ended up getting pulled over. That van, that RV that she was in was searched. They found mass quantities of drugs, which she did not know about, and they charged everyone in the RV with trafficking. We did live stream fundraiser. I've done one-on-ones. Descent in Bloom wrote a beautiful article about this. And we could use help. You know, again, we got to the first goal, which was 12.5. It's stalled out at 12.6 ever since. But the fight continues, and the lawsuits are still pending. They need to hire experts. They need to pay lawyers. They need to keep her out of prison. Like for decades. She's literally facing decades in prison. So any cash that could be donated for that, fuck ICE, okay? But also fuck the prison system, and all of this is just somebody who was in the wrong place, wrong time, bad circumstances. And yeah, she's too pretty. She's also autistic and vegan on top of it. And they tried to give her food with meat in it that made her violently sick. Okay, she can't necessarily process things that are said to her that fast, and she was put into solitary for asking a question about food. Watch the one-on-one and read the article. It's horrible what they put her through, and that was only in 2 weeks, and she's facing 3 decades of that. We got to keep her out. Finally, we're going to talk about Shanda. We're never going to stop talking about Shanda. We miss Shanda every day. It's now been 8 weeks since we lost her on April 3rd. We set up the Shanda Masta Fuck Cancer merch collection at the INN merch shop. And it was her birthday week and a half ago. And but I did, there are still, again, expenses that are still ongoing related to the treatment that she encountered and final expenses that her family still had to endure. So if this is still open, it has not been closed yet. And once we'll give any profits that are made from the collection to her family. And then once that's done, we will then start donating this to a cancer charity. The shirts are really nice. Shout out to Big Frog for the merch store, and Oz got a hoodie, and he said it's really good quality, soft. I know Anna Mayers has purchased a tank top. So we have it available in t-shirt, ladies t-shirt, tank top, and hoodie. So go check that out at the merch store. You can go to, again, IndieNewsNow.com, click on the merch link, and it's right at the top, the Shanda Masta Fuck Cancer collection. All right. Yeah, I know. That went pretty quick tonight, Cookies. I'm kind of spent. But oh, right. Of course, Shanda was a Indie Media Award honoree from 2023 for Beauty and the Boomer and Trailer Park Pundit and her excellence in live streaming and broadcasting. And we miss her, and her legacy will be kept alive. Yes, that's funny. Speaking of which, Lily has been. I introduced Lily to Oz, and Lily actually went to her first protest on Saturday, and Shanda would have been incredibly proud. And shout out to Lily. She's organizing her town against AI data center. She's in the Reno area. Shanda, the Cookies. We all miss Shanda. Feel like we lost family. We miss her. We do. Yep. No, and yes, no. Aspen does not deserve that at all. Yeah, everyone is getting cancer. It's a nightmare. It's, you know, the turbo and again, the data centers are only going to give even more people cancer. Allegedly. But we all know that that's pretty much the case. All right, fam. I'm done for the night. I would ask you all to support independent media. I love you all. Thanks for hanging. We'll see you soon. And see you next Tuesday. Later, fam. Love you. No! We just fucking lost the stream.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want?